Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here together this morning. We ask and commit this activity into your mighty hands. Everything we are coming to do here, Lord, be with us. Share this meeting. See us through as we come to understand the university policies to advance this university. Help us, grant us strength. In all our ways, in the name of Jesus have I prayed. Amen.
Thank you very much. Please, can we give him a round of applause, please? Yet again, today we are fortunate to have two distinguished policies, two distinguished persons to talk about two very important policies of the university, the policy on risk management and then a policy on health and safety. One is a full professor of planning and the other is a full professor of clinical microbiology. And so we are honored to be tapping into the knowledge resources of such great national resources. Shall we clap for them even before they mount the podium? To share this, sharing this podium with me as an MC is Miss Lydia Jabbar. Can we clap for her, please? Lydia, please come in front. She will continue from here as I take my seat. She will introduce some dignitaries, some deputy directors currently available, and then she will hand it over to the deputy director of software to continue with a brief and giving us some highlights on the essence of quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning once again to everyone, and welcome to this morning's session. So we are proceeding with the program, and I think for now we do not have our director around at the moment, so we will call on Mr. Azu to give us the welcome address.
Thank you, everyone, for making it here. The director, unfortunately, is not able to join us. He indicates that he's in another meeting. Yesterday, I think 2 days ago, we started this series of policy summits. We started with maintenance policy and then quality assurance policy. And today, we want to continue with the risk management policy. I think it goes without saying that is a very high priority policy because there are a lot of risk in what we do, especially as IT. Our work is very central to the functioning of the university. Without IT these days, most universities will not function. And one will wonder what will happen if, let's say, our data center is caught up with fire. Those are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Are we ready for such an event? So this is hopefully will prepare our minds so that we can take the necessary measures that would help us to at least mitigate these risks. So without saying much, I would like to welcome the resource persons and the person of Professor Imoro. And I don't know the name, sir, sorry. Professor Boama, okay, to take the podium and then take us through the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Where's the other MC? Okay. Do you have a wife? You don't have a wife? You have a wife? She didn't see you this morning. You ran away. You ran out. That's why somebody had to come and dress you up. Sorry, that's just by the way. I happen to know a lot of faces here. But when I got the information that you needed to have the risk management policy, I thought it was long overdue, given the work that you do. Your mandate ties in directly with the mandate of the university. Without IT, the university will not function. And sometimes the IT officers in our places, when we come and everything is down, they are not at ease. They are in trouble. And so, given the fact that you touch on every aspect of the university, this workshop is very important for us and for you and for the entire university. Because of the importance that we attach to it, I thought that for me alone to come and deliver it, it will not be worthwhile. I needed to get somebody who was central to the formulation of the policy to come and help me to deliver it. This is how we are going to deliver it. We don't want it to be a normal talk shop. We want it to be in the workshop mode, so that by the end of the session, you will have a draft of your risk register that you can later on polish up and then submit to the university. Because if you have good strategies based on your potentials and your strengths, and you are doing certain activities to help the university to achieve its objectives, and one day the unexpected happens, we will be back to ground zero. And if the intention of the strategic plan is to maximize the use of resources, it will be irresponsible for us to sit down and think that nothing will happen, only for one day something to happen, and we are back to ground zero. That will be so irresponsible for the management of the university and the management of IT, UITS, and the staff in all. So we are going to run a workshop. He was part of the committee. He's the brain behind the risk management policy of the university. He will start the presentation. Somewhere along the line, I will distribute some cards to every one of you. When we get to the stage where there will be a stage where he will ask you to write certain things. Then, after that, we'll continue. When you get to another stage, he will ask you to evaluate what you have written in terms of the probability and the impact, so that by the end of his presentation in about 30 minutes, you would have had a feel of how to identify a risk, identify the probability of its occurrence, and identify the impact. Just one. After that, then I'll take over the facilitation again, and everyone will now increase from 1 to about 5. And I know that no two people will identify the same risk. So by the time we gather everything, we would have had the risk that is associated with your work for the university. And that will be a draft of your risk register that you will polish up and then calculate it and give it up to the university. Then the university will gather all of them. Let me, before I hand it over to him, I think I want to congratulate you. I think you are the first of the bodies of the university that has taken this initiative. And so we don't want you to take the initiative, and some people will come and pass you. That's why we are interested. We will follow up on what we have started today, so that in about 2 weeks' time, you should have your register ready. Whether you have a director of risk management for the university or not, we will have our document ready, and then we can present it to the university so that we can move on. So without wasting much time, I will invite Dr. Boama to take over with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning once again. Prof, thank you very much.
So the focus today is on risk management policy of the university. But we need to first understand the fundamentals of risk. What is risk itself? What are the basic principles involved in risk management? So the presentation will focus on risk management, the conceptualization of risk, and then risk management models that are in place, and what we are doing at Kenya University here. So I have adopted this definition from the Australia and New Zealand standard on risk, basically because it captures everything risk management. First, it talks about procedures and practices, communication of risk, establishing the context, identification of risk, risk analysis. Communication is very important in risk management. I will argue today that we can't have an effective risk management without collective ownership of the risk management process. That means that there must be effective communication among all the stakeholders involved in the risk management process. And in this case, all the stakeholders of the organization, the university, and our unit as an IT unit. Okay. Now, if you identify data, if you have data, if you identify the risk, the data is meaningless unless you analyze the risk. So you have to analyze the data, determine the likelihood, the impact, and the size of the risk. So you say you have to analyze it. The evaluation and treatment, you identify the risk and you prescribe a treatment for the risk. It's not enough to prescribe the treatment. You have to monitor and ensure that the application of the treatment is yielding the desired results. So it has everything that we need to know. Now, in terms of the risk management models, there are basically two perspectives. One is the traditional view of risk management, and the other is the integrated approach to risk management. With the traditional view, risk is managed by the individual units or the separate units of the organization. So at Kenya University here, UITS, we're managing its risk. Business, we're managing its risk. All the various units and departments will manage their risk independent of the other. But the key problem with the traditional approach to risk management is that risk is integrated, isn't it? Risk is not in isolation. Now, let's assume that I sit at KSB, and then I want to process examination. The risk that we face in examination is directly linked to the UITS risk, because you manage the examination management to a system. So you cannot manage examination risk in one department without reference to our UITS. I believe the finance department, they rely on you a lot. So that is kind of integration among the risk. Okay. So that is the problem with the traditional way of managing what risk. The focus is mainly on what? Insurance. Now, with enterprise risk management or integrated risk management, we are aggregating the entire risk of the university, the organization, into a common risk portfolio. So we are asking a simple question. What is the risk portfolio of the university? Don't forget that some risks may cancel out when you put them together. The other issue is that if you are trying to manage risk at individual levels, there will be borderline risks. There may be a risk that transcends across what organizations or what, or units. So an important question is, who should manage that kind of what? Risk. And so we need to put all the risks into a common portfolio. And that is the approach KNUST has adopted. Okay. Now, for success, for risk management to be successful, we need a strong risk culture. A culture where each and every member of the organization is seen as a stakeholder and participates fully in the risk management process and activities. There must be collective what? Ownership. You must all own the process. It's not an issue where there's someone who is say, I'm the director of risk management, or I'm a risk management officer, or I'm the HOD, and I'm in charge of risk management. Each and every member of the unit or the university must be part and parcel of the processes involved in the risk management. You must all be involved in the identification of the risk, So there might be a strong consultation among the stakeholders. In the review process, in the monitoring process, there must be consultation. And so you must all own the risk and participate fully in the identification, the monitoring, the review, the recording, and the what? Treatment of the risk we identify. Good. So, what is the approach at KNUST? As I said, KNUST has adopted an enterprise risk management because it's a superior model to the silos approach of managing risk. Okay. And then, so all business units have risk management responsibilities for local risks. So you realize that we are going to have two kinds of risk registers at KNUST here. We have the universal risk register. Okay, that basically is a collection of the major risks that impact on the strategic objectives of the university. Now, when you drill down, UITS, for instance, you have your own objectives, but that fits also into the strategic objectives of the university. There may be some risks that are UITS were specific. That is a kind of a local risk. So today, you are going to initiate the process of preparing your risk register, your local risk register. And that will also contribute to the universal risk register of the university. Okay. So, the risk management policy of KNUST, the key purpose is to help the university to effectively manage the risks of the university, to identify the risk, prescribe solutions to the risk, and implement the mitigation measures that have been identified. Okay, so it sets up the framework, the policy framework, the guiding principles for the risk management. It proposes certain things that should be done and set up the institutional arrangement for effective risk management in the university. Okay. So the first principle is that it's enterprise risk management, collective risk management, risk aggregation. And then the university also commits what? To implementing the risk management framework. You can't manage risk without the framework. So the framework is what is guiding all of us on what to do and what not to do when it comes to risk management. We need to develop a strong risk culture, and that is guided by the framework. Okay? And I have already discussed this collective ownership. We must all own the process. So we are all stakeholders. It's not the VC, it's not the provost. Every member of the university community, including students, are all stakeholders in the risk management process. Okay. And then there must be periodic review of the risk management process, of the risk, identified risk. You see that risky situations are very dynamic. Risk is a very, very dynamic issue. It's not something that you say that we have identified our risks today, and that is the risks forever. It doesn't work like that. A risk today may not be a risk tomorrow. A risk that is ranked low today may be ranked high tomorrow. So you need to periodically review our risk register and review our processes so that you will be on top of the game. Okay. And then commitment to the risk appetite. Now, risk appetite, you have to determine the tolerance limit. So the risk appetite is the risk tolerance limit. What is the amount of risk are we willing to assume as a university, as a unit? We cannot say that we have too much risk or less risk without reference to something. The reference point is the risk tolerance limit, is the risk appetite. And per the KNUST risk policy, the risk management unit will advise the vice chancellor and the executive committee on what the risk appetite should be. They will help advise them to set up the risk appetite. And all our activities should be geared towards not exceeding that risk appetite. So we have to conform to the risk appetite. Okay. So, in the risk identification process, we need a metric to help us identify the risk. To scale, we need a scale. Okay. So we have, on this scale, we have the likelihood or the probability of occurrence, and then we have the impact on the university, the impact on the strategic objectives. So now, for every risk that you identify, okay, you should be able to determine its impact on the specific objective or strategic objective of the unit. So it's not just listing the risk, but it should have effect on what you do, on your ability to realize your objectives as a unit. So now at this point, we realize that we rank them. We are going to, this is the adopted scale at KU University here, and we rank from 1 to what? 5. So in the case of the likelihood, 5 is what? Very likely scenario, very likely risky event. Okay? And 1 is less what? Likely. And then in terms of the impact, it went from low impact to very high what? Impact. The product of the likelihood and the impact will determine the size of the risk, which will then be used for the ranking of what? Ranking purposes. Okay. So now, at this point, Prof. Area said that you identify some few issues. So I will at this point ask each and every one of us to identify just one risk that impacts on our activities at UITS, and then specify the specific objective it may affect it. Okay. Just one. You add on just one. So if each one of us identifying one, we have about 30 or 40 risky events identified already. Yeah, they'll be teaching, so some will cancel out. Are you all set? Are you all done? Just one risk. Just one risky event. Okay. Now, I also want you to determine the probability of occurrence of the risky event that you have identified. How will you rank it in terms of the likelihood of occurrence? Do you think it's there's a high likelihood or a very low likelihood? And so indicates the likelihood. So if you think that the likelihood is low, very unlikely, you write 1, okay? If it's very likely, you write 5. And then the impact, okay? So do that one also for us. The risk you identified, okay, determine the likelihood and the impact on the achievement of your strategic objectives at UITS. Using the scale here, 1 to 5, 1 is very likely, and then 1 is very unlikely, and then 5 is very likely. And then in terms of the impact, 1 is very low impact, and 5 is very high impact. But you can also have not likely, neutral, likely. Any of them. Okay. How do you rank the risk? That is all. High, low, and so on and so forth. Okay, I hope we are all done. So now, once you identify the risk, okay, and then you determine the probability of occurrence and the impact, then we have to measure the size of the risk. And the size of the risk is simply the likelihood times what? The impact. So estimate the size of your risk. Okay, you identify the risk, you determine the likelihood and the impact. So what is the size of the risk? So write down the size of the risk. Are you all done? This is Prof said it's a workshop, not a talk shop, so I think I have to give you a lot of assignment to do. Okay. Good. Now, the size. Estimate the size. Yeah, now the size of the risk. So multiply the likelihood by the impact. Okay. Now, once we have the size of the risk, then we are now in a position to rank the risk. You realize that you might have identified several risks in the unit. You have to rank them in order of what? Important. And in order of importance here means how significant the effect of the risk. Okay. Please, we want to pick the cards. So, okay, now let's proceed. So now, once you have the size of the risk, then we are just about to rank the risk. Okay. So you see that per the metrics we are using at KNUST here, if the size is between 1 to 4, then it's a risk we will rank as low. Okay. The effect on the strategic objective is what? Low. Now, if it's 5 to 10, that is what? Medium. 12 to 16 is high, and 20 to 25 is extreme. When we have a high and extreme risk, it's something that requires immediate attention. So immediately, whoever is responsible for that unit or responsible for managing the risk, whose attention should be drawn to that? You require immediate attention when you have a high and extreme what? Risk. It's something you don't joke with it. Okay. So, good. So look at the metric we have here. If it's a high or extreme risk, those are the ones I have shaded red. And those are the ones I just said they require immediate management what? Attention. It's not something you joke with. Instant attention is required. We need to treat such risks immediately. And then when it's low, sometimes low risk, you may not even need any deployment of resources. We just need to monitor the risk. As I said, risky environments are dynamic environments. So it's low today, but might not be low in 1 hour or 2 hours time or the next day. So you continue to monitor such risks as the risk events will evolve. Okay, good. Now, risk rating, designation, and action plan. You have ranked the risk. What next? What do you do with that? Who is responsible for what? Now, per the KNUST risk policy, when the risk is ranked as low, it's a kind of an acceptable level of what? Risk. But as I said, we need to continuously monitor what? Such risk for escalation or any other development. And such risks are normally managed at the unit level. So the heads of departments, the deans, the directors, the provost, depending on where the risk is situated, will have to manage it. Sometimes the responsible person may even designate someone else as the risk owner who must monitor the risk on his or her behalf. Okay. When it is a medium kind of risk, it's generally acceptable. Continuous monitoring is also essential. And again, it should be done at the unit level. But so long as risk falls within the high and extreme risk, it's unacceptable. We don't want to tolerate that kind of risk. The effect is very significant on the realization of our strategic objectives, and the vice chancellor or whoever the vice chancellor has nominated, attention should be drawn to it. Is that fine? Good. Now, how do you identify risk? It means that we need a mechanism for recording what? Risk. And that is the risk register. So as I said at the beginning, we have two kinds of what? Risk registers at KNUST. One is the universal risk register. That should be done by the risk management unit. And then we have the local risk registers, something you're doing now. And as Prof said, once you do it, it's not just for the unit. Although it's the unit's risk register, the university must be in the know. So a copy must be forwarded to the university, and the university will continuously monitor the implementation of the mitigation plans the unit has put in place. Is that okay? Good. So, local risk register. And now, you see, risk management, this is the process of risk management. And what we have adopted at KNUST here, we have the strategic objective. Remember what I said that for every risk that you identify, you should be able to connect it to a particular strategic objective of the university or of what? Of the unit. So, you have identified the strategic objective, and then you have identified what? The risk. The risk identification process is what I said. It's not something someone sits down somewhere and says, I'm the manager, I'm this, and then you are writing the risk. You have to consult people. You have to consult stakeholders in the unit, gather their inputs, so they have a risk register that is collectively what? Owned. There must be shared ownership of the process. So you realize that Prof did not sit down and write the risks for UITS or call the UITS director. Each one of us have identified some risks today. That's how the process should be. There might be a consultation. Okay. So I say the identification and the analysis process requires what? Consultation with all stakeholders in the unit. You require the input of each and every member of the unit of the university in the risk identification and analysis process. Then you evaluate the risk to determine the impact of the risk, the rank of the risk, and so on and so forth. Now, once you have done that, you prescribe a treatment for the risk, a mitigation what? Measure. Take note that mitigation measures cannot be 100%. And so you must also ask what we call the residual risk. The risk left after what? Mitigation. So for a particular risky event, you have proposed that A, B, C, D is the mitigation what? Measure. But the question is, after implementing the mitigation measure, what is the amount of risk that is left? That is the residual risk. And that should also be what? Estimated. Because residual risk will be very, very dangerous. Okay. And then we have the monitoring and review. As I said, risky environments are dynamic environments. Things are changing continuously and sometimes at very, very fast pace. And so you need to constantly monitor the process and review the mechanisms and even the risk register itself. It's even possible at the next review, a risk that was ranked high, at the next review will be ranked what? Low or medium, and so on and so forth. Okay. So if the mitigation measures have actually worked, then we expect that the risk will be downgraded at the next what? Review. Okay. Now, throughout the process, you say what? There should be what? Communication. Communication with whom? All stakeholders. All stakeholders must be involved and must be in the known at every stage of the process, where we are, what we have done, and the next thing to be done. Okay. Good. Now, this is the institutional framework adopted by KNUST for risk management. Okay? So, the overall responsibility for risk management in the university, okay, is from what? The university what? Council. Underneath the council, you have the audit committee of council, and they have the vice chancellor and the executive what? Committee. So all other people with risk management responsibilities, they report directly to the vice chancellor and the executive what? Committee. So here you see that we have the risk management unit here, charged with the overall responsibility of risk management in the university. But it doesn't mean that they have to do it alone. They have to consult all of us, every member of the university community, including students, in determining the risk. And then you have the colleges, faculties, units, departments. They all have a role to play. That is what you're also doing here. You have to identify your local risks and participate fully in the risk management process. And then we have quality assurance unit and the internal audit unit, who have to provide what? Internal oversight. They have to advise management, they have to advise the vice chancellor, they have to advise the executive committee, whether the risk management framework is effective, is efficient, and is achieving the desired what? Results. So that is the role of the COPU and then the internal audit unit. And then you also need external assurance. And external assurance will be provided by the university auditors, and regulators also come in, because Whatever we do must conform to the regulatory regime on tertiary education or whatever we are pursuing. If it's procurement, there's a regulatory regime on procurement, and our activity must conform to that. That is the external assurance. Okay. So this therefore means that the local risk register that we have initiated today will be reviewed by a couple, will be reviewed by the risk management unit, internal audit unit, and even the external quality assurance bodies. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I'm done. Any questions?
Thank you very much. There is a reference here. Ado and others, they wrote a paper last year. They published it last year. It is based on a survey of 10 universities in Ghana who are making an effort in terms of risk management. Out of the 10 universities, only 40%, just 4, had a risk management policy, but we are not sure whether they have a risk register. That one we can be sure. And all the universities, including KNUST, in fact, KNUST had a risk management policy, but no risk register. Do you have one? Okay, I've never seen it. Okay, that's good. So you have the universal one. Meanwhile, the units don't have. Okay, so that's good. Thanks for the correction. So it looks like we have advanced. We have a risk policy and we have a risk register. But there are other 6 universities that don't have. As at last year, when they published the paper, the risk management policy was not on the website of the university. Now it is on the website of the university, so we are making strides. But we want to move faster. That's why we are here for this workshop. I want us to give an opportunity for questions. So that, but I have 2 questions for him, even though I came with him. This one is sabotage. It's sabotage. You see, he used a certain word that I don't agree with him. He says, risk appetite. Who has an appetite for risk? I know I have appetite for fufu. Some people have a good appetite for, Ghanaian beans, gobe. But to have an appetite for something that you don't like. Aha.
We cannot say we don't like risk. So when we are managing risk, we don't eliminate risk, but we restructure the risk to the level that is acceptable. Let's assume there's a financial institution. If it doesn't take risk, the business must collapse. Okay. Because the reward that the institution obtains is a reward for risk. So we have to take the risk, but it might be calculated risk. So we should be able to manage it. That's why we manage it. But we don't eliminate it. You can't eliminate risk.
Okay, so why don't you use the word tolerance?
At some point I said the risk tolerance limit.
That's what I like. I can tolerate some risk. But to have an appetite for it, it's something else. But that is just by way of trying to understand the issue more. We also, the second question is about risk policy and a risk register. Do we need to have both?
Yes, please. We need to have both.
Okay.
The risk register is a recording of the risks and the prescriptions to mitigate the risk.
Okay.
But the policy is the guiding framework that even guide the preparation of the risk, that shows the relationship between the stakeholders and the responsibilities assigned to various stakeholders in the university. So if you look at our policy, there is a responsibility for the Vice Chancellor, a responsibility for the risk management unit, for the dean. Everything is spread out clearly in the policy. And the policy gives us directives as to how risk should be recorded in the university.
Okay. Good. That is fine. How many of you have seen the risk management policy? How many? Show by hand. Okay. Only 2 people. Well, it's policy number 30. Policy number 30. It's on the university website. So search for it, go through it, and then you will understand what the policy really entails. As for the risk register, yes, he says they have it for the entire university, but I don't think it is wise enough to publish your university register, risk register. No, that one is, you will scare people away. So that one
you are telling outsiders,
exactly.
I have a lot of problems, come and help me fix it.
So that one, it will not be wise to publish it, so don't publish it. But you as UITS, I said in the beginning that you need a risk register. If even the entire university doesn't have, or any other unit that doesn't have, it doesn't bother me. But you must have, because if there is any huge risk, any event that occurs can bring down the university to a standstill.
And probably there's one thing I can say about this. When we were preparing the universal risk register, okay, UITS contributed a lot.
Oh, yes.
Most of the positive feedbacks that we got that guided the preparation of the risk came from UITS. You were very, very frank, and you were very, very straight to the point. There were other units, you go there, and then you see the person he's trying to move around it, dancing around it, but it wasn't like that with UITS. So we appreciated it, and I think that you will do the same preparing your local risk register.
Good. Yeah. Fine. So my questions are finished. It's now left to you. Only 10 minutes, and then we are done. Oh, there are many. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Doc. Doc, please, we'll kindly appreciate if you can repeat your name again.
I'm Nicholas Adeboama.
Dr. Adeboama, thank you very much. Doc, please,
will it be right to say... forget about the doc, it doesn't change anything.
All right.
You can call me Nicholas, it doesn't change anything.
Okay, Nico. Please, will it be right to say that an institution that has greater risk is a more valuable institution?
It's a more vulnerable institution.
Valuable.
Valuable. Well, you see, risk in itself can break down an institution. And risk is also valuable, okay? I mean, you have to value the risk, take what is appropriate for you. But it doesn't mean that when you have more risk, then you are valuable. And if an institution is assuming a risk that could be avoided, then how could that institution be valuable? So the value of the institution is not dependent on the amount of risk the institution has. But how the institution manages its risk can have significant impact on the value of the institution. For instance, in grant seeking, they will always ask for your risk register. They will ask for your risk policy. Why are they asking for all those documents? They want to make sure that the grant that is being provided to you will be managed and managed well within a certain context. So if, for instance, in our risk register, we have captured the possibility that UITS may receive funding, and there's a risk of, I'm not saying that is what we do, okay, I'm using as an example, there's a risk of embezzlement, and you have put in place mechanisms to deal with that. Then the funder is convinced that when I provide UITS that level of funding, it will be put to the right use. And that is the value you secure from your risk management activities. Yeah.
Hello, Doc. So I have 2 questions. The first one, you said there's a risk appetite. So is the risk appetite measuring the CEO or the company? So let's say we have a VC who has a very high appetite. Does it change our risk? And we have another one who, the institution is a conservative one. They are laid back. So those 2, can we marry the 2? Then the second one, in the estimation of our impact, is there a scientific way of doing it? Because I just did a guesstimation. I just picked the number on the screen and I wrote something down. Is there a scientific way of doing it so that anytime we can do it accurately and it will be fine with us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your first question is on the risk appetite. And if I understood you well, it's about the CEO's risk appetite, whether the CEO has higher level of risk or lower level of risk. You see, we have different levels of appetite for risk, okay? My level of appetite may not be the same as your level of appetite. But you realize that the determined tolerance limit is not for the CEO, it's for the organization. That is why there's a consultation process in determining the risk appetite. And you realize that in the presentation, I said that the appetite should be set. In fact, there must be a recommendation by the Vice Chancellor and the Executive Committee to Council for approval of the risk appetite. And the risk management unit, after their consultation, will have to make a recommendation to the Executive Committee for consideration as to what should be the risk appetite. And the final say is the Council of the university. So it follows the process. So it's not about somebody's risk appetite. And then he said, in determine, is it the impact or the likelihood? Yeah, you see, all those three things, the size is just a product of two things. So what we determine are the likelihood, okay, and the impact. And you realize that there are both qualitative and quantitative measures of risk. Okay, I didn't go there. But there are qualitative approaches and quantitative approaches. If I'm measuring risk, okay, in my typical quantitative mindset, I will calibrate, I will build a model to do that. And that is what I do. When I sit in my office, that is what I do. I will calibrate, okay. Now, there are also some risks that you cannot even determine quantitative measure. That it has to be qualitative. In such instances, the experience and the expertise of the person assessing the risk, the experience in working at UITS, your prior knowledge of it will help you to determine the likelihood and the impact. Good.
For the qualitative one, it is better when you have a process determining the computations. And the process involves a workshop like this. Everybody brings their idea of what they think will be the impact qualitatively. Then it is accepted that once it is a group that together did some brainstorming and came out with a measure, it is more objective and it is more scientific. Okay, so that's the other aspect of it. So that it's not only one person who determined it. Several people agreed that fire, this is the impact. Any other question?
Okay. As technical people, most of our processes have precautionary measures that we attach to them. So in determining the probability of the risk, do we consider the precautions that have already been taken, or we assume no precautions are taken?
No, you take them into account. And you will recall that some people even said that there's a residual risk. And that residual risk is the amount of risk left after your mitigation measures. So the precaution measure you have already is a kind of mitigation measure. So what you are determining is the amount of risk left after implementing those measures in place. Good.
Okay, thank you, Doc. My question is, with regards to identifying the risks, from your experience, is it possible to come up with a register that doesn't include a particular risk that maybe it evaded you, and all of a sudden you are confronted with it? And does the policy have a way to deal with such risk?
So the question is about unidentified risk.
Unidentified risk.
Yeah, it's very possible, you see. And unidentified risk is the most dangerous thing, because you don't even know it, let alone planning to deal with with the risk, okay? And that is why I also said that it's a continuous process. It's not a one-off event. And to the likelihood of not identifying a particular risk is limited when the consultation is broad and it's wide. And that is why we must actually consult in doing all that. I remember when we were preparing the Universal Risk Register, there were a lot of things we received from unis that we really didn't understand it. So what did we do? We went back to them, we sat down with them, we consulted them, they explained it to us, and then we were able to understand it, and then together with them, we rank it. So that is how the process should be. And if you consult broadly, the most likely, the chances of not identifying some risk is limited, and they can identify most of the risk. And if you are continuously reviewing, you will catch up with almost everything. Good.
So the continuous review is important so that new risks can be taken on board. So after you have finished the register, you didn't think about a certain risk, but somewhere down the course of the year, a new risk pops up. During the review, you have an opportunity to update the register and include the new ones that you didn't think of.
So just to add to what Prof said, that is why, as part of this, we propose continuous risk recording system. So even after recording the risk today and preparing your risk register, you must provide opportunities for people to record the risks they identify and communicate appropriately. So we have prepared the register today. It is published today, but I may have identified a risky event tomorrow. I should be able to record it and forward it to the appropriate authority for consideration. So you don't have to wait till the actual review before you even think about those things. It must be recorded on continuous basis. Good.
Please, a quick question. I just want to find out, is it possible for the likelihood of the risk occurring be different from the impact?
Yes. You see, the likelihood, let's look at it from this perspective. The likelihood is, look, I'm dancing. What is the chance that I may fall down? How likely is it that I will fall down? Okay? But the impact, when I fall down, what is the impact on me? Are you getting it? So the floor may be very, very slippery, so there's a high likelihood that I will fall down. But because of the nature of the floor, when I fall down, the injury to me may be limited. Do you get it? So the likelihood could be 5, but the impact could be 1.
Because I was just thinking that the likelihood, there was a point where it was neutral. I'm not sure whether it was number 3 or 2. But if it's neutral, there's no way you can say that the impact is going to be high. Okay. I don't know if you get the point I'm trying to make.
But the impact could be high and the likelihood could be low. It could be anyway. Okay. But there are 2 different issues. How likely is it this will happen? And when it happens, what is the effect?
Thank you.
Good.
Maybe I'll attempt to try and answer that. Let's say you have an old man and a young man. If an old man, a 70-year-old man is to fall down, the impact is what higher because he's likely to break his leg or something like that. But if it's a young man, that is very, even though they have the same likelihood, the impact is what different.
Very good scenario. Thank you very much.
Doc, thank you very much. Please, where do we put this risk? The risk of the staff's salary not being too good. Where do we put that risk?
The risk of what?
A staff's salary not being too good. I mean,
maybe if I will put it under risk, staff retention. Yeah, because the staff turnover is also a risk to an institution. So if there's an institution and the staff turnover is very high, then almost all your experienced staff will be leaving you. So I will put it, that is why I will discuss such risk. Yeah.
Whether there's but then in IT we have what we call zero-day attacks. Zero-day attacks. So these are attacks that or weaknesses in your system that are unknown to you, but then they could also be known, but then there's no patch to it. So how would you classify such a risk?
The first one is also unknown to you. You don't know it, and so it poses the most dangerous situations for your organization. The only way you will know it is the continuous monitoring review of your risky situations. But now, when you know and you can't do anything about it, again, is the monitoring and the evaluation. Constantly monitoring and evaluating it. So if it's getting out of hand, then you may have to. But there are several of such instances. In fact, there are some risks that is even better, you don't even manage it. Although the impact is high, you don't even need to deploy any resources. Let's assume that there is a risk, and then the impact on the organization is 1 million cedis. But the cost of mitigation is 2 million cedis. Is it worth mitigating it? Because you want to save 1 million with 2 million. But it could also be very harmful to your organization. So you have to monitor it to see whether it's getting out of control and you need to quickly do something about it.
Okay. Doc, please, my last question. Please, where do we situate all this risk management? How do we juxtapose this to project management? And if you can, since we have two experts here, can you touch a bit on project management for us? Thank you.
You want to be in project management? We pay consultation fee. Because you want to push us to another field. But the bottom line is that the risk management processes and organization are basically the same for projects. Every project has its own inherent risk. So you follow the same process in identifying the risk and so on and so forth. But the institutional framework will always be different. The institutional framework, we have to follow the same process, consult. Because on a project, you are working with other people. You have to consult them and so on and so forth. Okay, good.
If you have one pen.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Please, you made mention of the risk policy and the registry, how important they are in managing risk and all of that. So I want to know that, based on current trends, for what periods would you advise, or how frequent is it going to be, like, in reviewing such policy?
Okay.
And how is it going to sort of synchronize with the registry?
Yeah, I think per the KNUSC risk policy, review is supposed to be done on a yearly basis. So, but at the end of every semester, we are expected to do some kind of quick review of the processes and things like that. But a comprehensive review of the risk register is supposed to be done on a yearly basis. So it is phased in line with the academic year. So on a yearly basis, we review the processes. Good.
Sir, please, do we have a director for risk, as is indicated in the policy?
Answer it. I don't think I'm the right person to answer it. To the best of my knowledge, we don't have a director of risk. But if you look at the institutional framework, in the absence of the director, the internal auditor should be the person who will move around and ensure that, or maybe take the roles of the director of risk. It's better to have a director because he will have 24/7 concentration, and the university is big, several units, and then he can monitor the different units and advise accordingly. But currently, we don't have a director yet.
But that is very interesting. Do you not think it will be a clash of roles, having an internal auditor and then a director of risk? And how are those roles different?
I think, Prof, just to answer what you said, if you look at the policy, the university is supposed to set up a risk management unit.
Yeah.
And then when the unit is set up,
then it will have a director.
Of the unit. Yeah. We realized that the policy was passed just last academic, last semester.
2021 or something.
Yes, last semester. Yeah. So it's a very new
It's a process that is.
So we are hoping that gradually we will have a risk manager or director.
It will be very, 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 very powerful. So I can see the next group tripping in. How many minutes do we have left?
Please, you have about 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes?
Yes.
So I will summarize. You, the director is not around, but you are deputation. Where is he? Okay. You have to take the responsibility. We need somebody who we will hold responsible for this. Good. Once you take it, I just want to go through a few of them. Okay. And then we agree so that you know how to formalize or to finalize it. What I have here is storm. Storm has been identified as a risk. And the person who identified it said the probability is 2. And then, I don't understand this. 2 times 7 or what? Who wrote it? I can't. Let me take a better one. This one is fire. We all know, in fact, the fire occurs a lot. A lot. In fact, when you go through, you have a lot of the issues of fire. And surprisingly, the fellow says fire, the probability is 5, and the likelihood is also 5. So 5 times 5, 25. So in terms of rank, I think this is about the highest. Okay. So it is the highest. Okay. So if you are ranking this risk, it's risk number 1. It means it is priority, you must attend to it, so you must have the mitigation measures. And that's why you have fire extinguishers. You make sure the source of fire that is coming can be handled so that it doesn't occur, because if it occurs, the impact is heavy. The next one is flood. But the person didn't even give any single measure, so I will skip it. Theft of computing equipment. The likelihood is 5, the impact is 5. What is happening to your security? You mean there's no security at all? That anybody can just walk in here and steal anything and go away? No, consider also the mitigation that has already been done in terms of doors are all locked up, so in terms of security, something has been done. So even though it's supposed to be extreme, 5 times 5 will be 25, that's extreme, but I think that you should reconsider it. The next one is risk of data loss. But, okay, the likelihood is 4, and the impact is 4. So if you multiply, you get 16. That's a high risk. It's in the high risk zone. So in terms of rank, it must be considered. Then there's another one, data loss, the same, but this one is 25. So different measures, as you shared. Somebody says it's 4.4, another says it's 5.5. So the conclusion is that it's a high risk. Power issues, electricity, power outages. The person says it's 5 times 5, which is 25. Maybe that's why you have a generator. Okay. Hey, the risk of deleting database records. Likelihood is 4, and 5 is the impact. The risk of deleting. Don't you have backups? I'll be surprised. Okay, so some of the mitigation measures already there, consider it so that you can, assess the likelihood appropriately. Okay, there are so many. Power loss is the same. Fire is happening again. Fire is happening again. Fire again. Fire outbreak. Cyber attack. This is the one that is very important to all of us. if there is a cyber attack, all our data will be lost. And it is likely that we may not even get salaries. Because if all the data is taken away, they have to process things, and then the university will come to a standstill. So let's see how he has ranked it. He says the likelihood is 4, and then the impact is 4. Impact, I have no doubt about his measure, but the likelihood, then we are sitting on tons. Yes, Director. Help him out. Okay.
Is it more likely to affect the impact? I think that is where we should be looking at.
It will affect both.
Because if an attack is likely to occur, in IT these days, the thinking is that you'll be attacked. It is what you do when you attack, that is what is important. So that will be the mitigation. And you indicated that we should have backups. So once we are attacked, we know we have backups, so we'll just switch quickly to the backups, and then we'll be up and running again.
Okay.
So maybe the likelihood that it will happen will be high, but the impact might be reduced because of the mitigation.
Okay, so give me.
So in this case, what you do is that in your discussion, the discussion part of the risk register, so you have a mitigation measures. Then you discuss that already we have these mechanisms in place. So even with a higher likelihood, when this happens, this will be restored. So it's part of the risk register. The actions part, you discuss that one day. Yes. So that people will not be scared that the worst will happen. Good.
I think there's a confusion with the scale. I think there's a confusion with the scale, where you have the scale 1 to 5, the likelihood, and then the impact. It is assumed that if you say that on the scale, if you say it's 3, neutral, it's a direct correlation with the impact. So it's 3 times 3. But is it possible to have, let's say, a likelihood of 1 and an impact of 5? Maybe that's
It's likely that you can have it.
For instance, the impact will be low. You can realize that the likelihood is high, but you have some mitigation measures already. You have backups. So you can easily restore your system. So the impact will be low.
Yeah.
Because of the backups available.
Good. I think we are almost done. I will hand over the cars to him, and I said we would follow up. In about 2 weeks' time, we'll follow up to see what is there a draft, if you have improved on this. And let me read just one interesting one. The risk of staff resigning. I think we mentioned it earlier, that when the remuneration is not good, it will bring about staff turnover. And then the final one is laptop theft. Why have you opened yourself in such a way that laptops can be stolen? Anyway, I don't want an answer. I've handed it over.
Thank you very much.
Please, shall we bow our heads and share a word of prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the first day of our policy summit. We believe in the spirit of your light, of your revelation. We will go out and do our best with whatever we've learned today. And this will make our unit great, make KNOC great, and make the nation great. We say thank you for this day and many other days to come with the policy summits that we have yet to do. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.